Welcome to the R&D data collection protocols for all the data propeller heads out there. Apparently, there's a bunch of them, Jamie, of which I are and you are one. Apparently,
I am.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Blackburn. He's the director of iAdvantage software. He's going to be talking about what's happening, get those data protocols working, because what happens on the front end affects the back end. Isn't that right?
That's exactly right.
And I'm Dave Lowe, your GovBrief host. Glad that you guys decided to join us. And we got a ton of different agencies here that are represented. So we want to thank you for spending a few minutes with us. And we definitely want to make sure that that you are incorporated in this. And this is the best briefing ever. Alyssa says, one new thing, just one, Jamie, one new thing.
One
that applies to her work. Now can't just be random, it has to apply to her work. And Paula from HHS, something I can use, for crying out loud. And Patricia from FEMA, I walk away smarter about better use of data. Love it. Craig from DHS, it solves all of my data issues. Craig, what kind of budget you got there, man? We can solve all your data issues. I promise you. Just have the right budget. Stephanie from DHS, the real issues were addressed with answers that would actually help the situation. Hopefully we'll be able to meet some of those for that today. Please address from the VA, from Adam, can veterans access this platform outside the VA firewall at home to complete questionnaires? I do believe the answer to that is what?
Yes.
Yes. Gary from EPA, on-prem system requirements. What are the on-prem system requirements? Most of the time you're where are you operating from?
We're actually in the cloud right now, but it's still the basics of Oracle and web. So yeah, it's going to be an easy thing for us to transition.
There you go. Love it. Stephen from BEP, what are the best practices for data structure in an analytical R&D lab by analyst, by instrument, by project, by date, or combo of those? Great question, Stephen. And I'm sure that Jamie's going to want to talk to you offline about that one. But Lynn, as I mentioned, welcome him earlier. Lynn, compliance and research efficacy. Very important, correcto?
Yes.
Hang on.
Oh.
Didn't remember to do the do not disturb. Anyhow, so compliance and research efficacy, big problem, correct? Correct.
That's where our bones were started from. That's how we got this whole thing moving.
Got it. And Cherry from the VA, how data fields are defined and checked. Love that. We'll talk a little bit about that. And Angelina from the VA, how can we set up the local IRB R&D for successful quick acceptance beyond an effectively designed protocol? I am sure that Jamie's going to want to talk about that. Well, if we don't answer that here, where will we answer that, Jamie?
Right after.
Right after. We'll make sure you get that.
Absolutely.
So real quick introductions. We'll give you a little introduction on iAdvantage, where they came from, talk about the briefing controls, as well as your challenges. A lot of challenges with data and big data, because the more data you got, the more challenges you got. So we're talking about the effective design framework, and that is exactly the process, because good data in the beginning means what, Jamie?
Good data has good results.
That's right, baby. So what is the eStudy platform? That's what we're going to be reviewing today, and maximizing your data flexibility, integrity to go exactly with what I think it was Angelina that mentioned that about all the flexibilities there. And then we'll get into some Q&A with you guys and recommended action steps, procurement options, and all those types of things. Session docs. Terry, if you would do me a favor and paste those into the chat for everyone to see. These are links that you can get directly to download these, and they're coming at you right now. And if you've been living under a rock and you don't know how Zoom works, you can go to the briefing controls and control things in the upper right-hand corner. View options, side-by-side mode. You are in control. You can make it larger or smaller. If you're trying to read something, you can make it bigger. You can do it on the fly. So there you have it. And participation is easy and encouraged, Jamie Blackburn. That's what we're saying. You can chat, you can raise your hand, you can do the Q&A. Make sure you send off put your contact info. If you'd like to connect on LinkedIn or anything like that, make sure you pop that in there. You can also, if you have something offline and you want to ask a question, send it to info@iAdvantagesoftware.com, and we will get started. This event is not endorsed by GSA or any other agencies. It's provided to you, the audience, for informational purposes only. All participation in this briefing is voluntary, and engagement by government personnel is not an indication or endorsement to purchase from anybody, including iAdvantage, or commitment to purchase from anyone. So the reason we do this is because GSA gave this to us so that you guys can participate. That's exactly why we did it. And in that participation, why in the world did you decide to join us today? Are you in management and want your data to work? Are you in R&D and have a current data collection need? I'm tired of scrubbing data. A lot of people are going to have to answer that one. I'm in procurement and want to know about iAdvantage. That's fantastic. Or my boss may become. Somebody's going to have to be a Weisenheimer and answer that one, Jamie. So while they're answering that, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what. Tell us about iAdvantage. And I know that you were founded in 2003. So tell us a little bit about how you guys got started and what your mission is.
Sure. So we started from a science company called Global Ag. And Global Ag had an intrinsic issue that was going on early on, almost 20 some odd years ago, which was you can't do everything on paper and have it grow and have this data always available. And so they started saying, wow, I believe at the time they were doing fax machines and all that sort of thing. And these scientists were smart enough to say, we got to get this data digitized. And so that's how it all started going down a line. And so they were doing, for big sponsors, they were doing a massive amount of study sites around the world in multi-languages. And it's all based on one thing, which is you got to make sure it's good data that's kept in a compliant way. Because as soon as you collect the data and as soon as you analyze it and start showing your science, guess what happens? Everyone says, well, did you collect this correctly? And did you do it with good compliancy?
Fantastic. So now you're a small business GSA contract holder. So that's one of the reasons why you guys are here today. I do want to share this results here from this poll. A lot of folks in here R&D and have a current collection needed. That's fantastic. So I want to make sure that you knew that we are talking to a bunch of R&D folks as well as management people. So we do appreciate you guys participating in that. And we do have some folks that have their hand raised, and I will get to you in just a minute. I promise you. But let's get into the nuts and bolts of are the agency challenges that sure. You've seen, because you've done a lot of work with ag and supporting ag with those larger organizations that you mentioned. So give us an idea of what they're up against.
Sure. So every 15 minutes, really, we're almost down to a second. We're all saving a tremendous amount of data each and every day, to the point where I think it's 2025, we're going to actually have 463 exabytes. And I believe it was, I have to teach someone something today. The key about exabytes are, besides the fact that they're huge, is that the two key words behind exabytes when we start talking about it are zettabytes and yottabytes, which I find to be the coolest name. But these—
How did you not like a yottabyte?
Yeah, exactly. And so these exabytes of data are creating one big issue, right? Which is we're collecting data. We're going the speed of our abilities to correct it through digitizing them. And we're collecting these things, but it does create problems. First of all, there's times when people have to do things that turn into falsification, summation issues, derivation issues, manipulation issues.
You telling me not anybody in this call would ever have any issue with falsification or anything like that? There's no way.
Now, let's say that sounds like it's a mean person, but the fact is sometimes we have to spill data out and we're not sure what to put, and we put our best guess, and that best guess might be way out of some of what we want to collect in that data. Poor documentation usually leads to that, right? For that reliability. And then there's often gaps, which are just people leave them blank and such. And then it's tricky to convert that data into valuable insights, right? So we're collecting all this data. We're having this growth of data because we want to actually use it for something in the purpose. We want to use it for business intelligence, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's machine learning. We're going to want to continue to collect more data. It's going to keep growing, and it's going to keep producing this one issue, which is it's not going to scale.
And that is one of the biggest issues that these agencies have. I know, because I've talked to a lot of them, and cleaning up the data is such an enormous challenge. and extremely expensive. So we're going to ask this next thing. How do you collect your data right now? And be honest with it. You can do that. Is it just a spreadsheet, sending stuff around? Do you have paper forms? You're mentioning faxes. I am old enough to remember that technology as well, Jamie.
Yep.
As well as phone, email, survey tools. Look at that. A lot of honest people, spreadsheets. Love it. Some people are using survey tools and professional survey contractor, and we've worked with those folks too. And I tell you, it goes back to the main driver of this is the design work up front means better results on the back end, right, Jamie?
That's exactly right.
And that's what we're going to be talking about more than anything. A lot of folks doing spreadsheets. Fantastic. Love it, love it, love it. Love it, love it.
Spreadsheets is where it's kind of where we started here. People were collecting on spreadsheets for even in the early days. So paper, spreadsheets. You know, the great thing about spreadsheets are it's easy to do and it's easy to get set up, and you can put your columns and rows and you're ready to go.
Yep.
The bad news is later on when you have to put it into some format and get it all summarized correctly, it becomes tougher because some guy didn't listen, or worse yet, the dude that likes Excel might not like the way you set it up and did something different.
And reformulate the column.
That's
oh,
right.
Man, it's fantastic. So there you go. Another 3 seconds to vote. It's painless, ladies and gentlemen. 2, 1, and boom. Here we go. Take a look at this, Jamie. Look at that.
Spreadsheet.
Love it. And that is exactly why we wind up having some challenges with data. And to talk about the effective design framework, because you have a system that's built around that, but your foundation, scientific methodology, what does that mean?
So because we were founded by scientists and doing science, they had to come up with a methodology that fits. And of course, in the scientific methodology, it's pretty straightforward. You have to start with asking a question. You always start with asking questions. You're going to do some research about what you think those questions could result in, even though there might be unknowns. Then you're going to formulate your hypothesis on how you're going to get all this together, and then you're going to collect. Now, at that point, it seems simple. We're very good at getting it from the beginning of asking the question to actually having people in the field. And we're going to talk a lot about how great our product deploys or how great our product becomes available to those people who have to answer those questions. But that's just the beginning, because then you're going to come back and you're going to have to report to your boss, because the first time it happens when you start collecting data is they're going to start saying, so how's it going? How are you doing right now? And in many cases, it means that you have to collect that good data. And we're going to talk about how our product actually makes people or keeps them in the line, so to speak, so they can't reformulate an Excel sheet or move column C behind D because it doesn't make sense to them. And in our case, it actually makes them collect the data, allows you to report it. It also reduces, of course, the two things that we're from the private industry. You got to reduce costs and you got to minimize those errors, because when you're doing government reporting, mistakes aren't allowed. You have to be very linear in thinking on going from A through Z. Right now, as we speak, there's 500 active data collections going on throughout the world. This is 900 sites at least that are in multiple countries and multiple languages. And so it allows us to collect it. And if I guess I'm in charge of this system and I don't look stressed, it's because it works really well. We're pretty good at this. This is what we do really well.
And that's fantastic. So the biggest thing, again, get it right in the design phase, no matter what systems you're using, right? If you get it right in the design phase and you lock it down appropriately and give the proper instructions, communication's huge, right? Getting the message out is that. So tell us about the eStudy platform, because that's what your expertise is working the eStudy platform. Tell us what that is, how it works, and then we can talk about how that applies to that scientific framework.
Sure. So begin up in the big box in the middle, you'll see this is our platform. This is where we operate. This is right now in Microsoft Azure. So because we're in the cloud, we can, of course, enables our product to do a lot of what if, Jamie, what happens if we need one more thing? We're also on Oracle's cloud, which also gives us capabilities. but that means that the data is always ready and available, right? So if someone's entering data in for a question that you're asking, it's going to be there as soon as possible. Now, the good news is actually our collection points, our notebooks, can be online and offline, because sometimes, guess what? We have such remote collection that oftentimes they're not online right away. There is no web everywhere. And so they're in the middle of, in our case, a scientific situation like a plot in the middle of a field, and they have to get the data collected, and then they have to walk back and send it to us. At that point, it comes back through the notebook, and it's now back in the system. And again, the notebooks coming in could come data from instruments. It could be they're putting it into it manually, or there could be exported from another system that they have that they want to be entered into these fields. When it comes into the database now, we've got it. We're there. And not only that, it means that the people who really are collecting it and putting it all together can now put it out to reports and account reporting or status reports to their boss. They can also put it into their document systems, right? So they can have it available so it generates a report. And I don't know about you, but we need to use templates, because sometimes people get too creative with reports when all we really want is a certain
Never happens.
Yeah, right. And so you don't want that creativity to always come through. You know, maybe it's good sometimes, but not always good. In our case, because oftentimes this is compliance reporting, whether it's for our companies or sponsors or whether it's for an agency, it's got to be in a certain format. We know that, but we don't want to spend a lot of time. So we have kind of an automagic way, right? So we have this kind of automagic way to put the data within the report, generates, and it goes. And you can do what you like doing with it, like emailing and such. At the same time, I don't know if you've noticed, there's a huge growth in data science. So we have to be able to take this data out and do what if situations, do analysis. We have to be able to do statistics against it. That in turn gives you that business intelligence opportunity to maybe ask a new question. Now, the cool thing about our product is, because we're fully auditable, we don't allow people just to change stuff. We could say, don't collect this data anymore, and we can update their notebooks overnight. But we also can augment the data so we can add a new column so that we see now, starting tomorrow morning, how many times have you thought you had the perfect set of questions and you put together a form, you have to rewrite it. You put together a survey and you say, oh, I have to re-email them again. Well, in our case, the notebooks are reestablished with this new question or this new field they have to enter, and boom, they have it. And now starting the next day, you can at least say, hey, look, we didn't think about this before. We measured twice and cut once, but we should have measured 3 times. Well, now we have the ability to do that. And again,
what I love with that, Jamie, is that if you're in the middle of a process, right, of understanding what's happening, it doesn't matter what the study is for or what the data collection is for, but if you learn something from the data that you already have to be able to refine in the middle, that's a good thing, right?
Right. Because you're always learning from the data you're collecting. It's constantly going to be, and if you're paying attention, right, nothing's better. Many times with Excel spreadsheets, you send them out, and then you got to bug them a little bit. You got to wait for them to send that in, and then you got to finally get some guy who can put 50 spreadsheets together. That's not the case. We can generate that report almost daily for you, so you can really get a heartbeat of what's going on with your data collection, even though they might be in a place with no network.
Yeah. And we just mentioned the flexibility of that. And I think that's a key piece for any of the next generation of data collection. Number one, making sure the data still stays locked down so that your answers can be utilized. So you don't have somebody writing a 50-page essay in a text field. Not that anybody here would do that, or anybody that works for anybody that's here that does that, but you know who you are. And so the idea here is making sure that the system's flexible, the framework is flexible enough to be able to handle that. And you already mentioned it's web-based, so, and that can be updated, like you said, immediately and rolled out, right?
That's right.
Fantastic.
So the notebooks will know whether or not they're online or offline. And these notebooks aren't our notebook. These aren't, they're iPads, and they're Apple iPads, they're Windows-based Surfaces, say, things that people work with in the field that have to be portable and mobile and such. Or it could be their PC, and we're good with that as well. So we support Windows as well. So it is web-based, and it gives us that advantage sitting in Azure. And all of that flexibility allows us to keep it current and be able to add and take away, but it really gives you that constants. And the constants is important. We call it data provenance. When you start collecting data and you're collecting it and you're analyzing it and you're managing and reporting on it, because we deal with science, they want to know where it came from. How did you get it? So if you make some brilliant end decision, at least you know how it began from the very get-go. Now, that's not often the case. I don't know how many times you've seen it where you see a graph and you go, where'd that come from? And everyone starts go, oh, wait, right? Now, science people get that, right? We've been putting documentation and footnoting our diagrams, where it came from, where it originated, who we refer to for years. And that's a real powerful function within our software capability.
Because you started with scientific methodology, right? That's why.
Right. That's right.
And so you're already built in the right framework from the beginning.
That's right.
And currently, like, you do a lot of work right now with supporting studies for ag, right?
That's right.
And
so sponsors who are doing genetic type testing, sponsors who are doing seeds, sponsors who are doing animal testing, those type of things. They can't afford to say, well, for us to scratch our heads, say, well, we think that came from over this way. It has to be very consistent and give them high confidence rate of collecting data.
And you mentioned the auditability of that, and so that there's no way to go back and change something after it's been done. That's awesome. So when we're looking at, and there was a question. I don't know if there's a question. There's also folks that are saying that they use SharePoint Online for repository. That's great. It's another great, it's another collection tool that a lot of folks have access to. And again, making the framework work big, making sure that you lock that thing down and make it work. So we have a breakdown. There's a lot of words here, but we have eStudy Manager, the Notebook Manager, and eStudy Publisher, right?
That's right. Those are the three key components of the platform. Again, the database runs on Oracle, the front end runs on Azure. Giving those architectures, we're able to expand and work with other people. So for instance, they often ask us, hey, can we get to our data our way? We don't even want to, we'd like to have the data a different way. So we have an API, for instance, in some cases for some of our customers who want them. All of those, if you look on the left, it talks about, first of all, our capability to maintain compliancy. We have a group here of validation engineers who make sure our stuff absolutely meets the rigorous, really, and consistency, the rigor and consistency that you expect from a software product that collects data that might help you make very important decisions. It's actually a great technique, and you see compliance growing through all the data collections because of that unknown we have to take away.
So fantastic. So now, as far as the workflow, so you have the design, the collect and report, and all this happens about as real time as it can possibly be, right?
That's right. You start off with design. There's some guy who wants to do this and wants to put it together. He might be your project manager, it might be your principal investigator, it might be your financial lead who has some questions to ask of a lot of people in different places. It could even be out in the field where you have to ask real people questions. Say they're coming out of an event and you want to get feedback from them. Well, it all comes from design first. You spend the time designing it. You then have the ability to put this out into the field, whether it's one, whether it's 10,000, whether it's in front of 12 countries, 4 different languages, that sort of thing. And you can generate it so it's available. And you can also time it, right? Oftentimes things are event-based, right? They're time-based. So I want it to start Monday. I don't want to start it when everyone looked at their emails. I want it to start Monday at 8 a.m. And then finally, you have to be able to see what's going on, take a heartbeat. I want to report on it. And then I want to compile all this data to report back to an agency the way they expect to be reported to.
And to your point, that's immediately accessible by management if they see a trend or something that they're not getting what they want or expecting, right? They can make changes.
The scientists that found this dealt with this very early on. That it would sometimes take days and weeks to get people to email back results. And it's no one's fault. It just takes time to respond to things. But when you're entering it in and it's going on as soon as it finds a network, which, that's the one thing. But the great news, it's very passive in that if it doesn't find a network, it waits till it does and it uploads it then. So here's kind of the same view. So you start off in design. Again, you're measuring twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then you're going to generate those notebooks. When you generate the notebooks, the database starts to be aware of this whole concept of collection that you're going to do. Then you're going to put the notebooks out there. If you have, I don't know how familiar everyone in the audience is with Internet of Things, but there's going to be devices that collect data as well. And we are pretty, I guess you would say, ambiguous to whatever data it might be. You could come and ask us, hey, can you automate some of the data interface, or can you make it so we can upload it? And today we actually upload pictures, we upload weather graphs. Oftentimes it's even GPS coordinates. So we can do all those type things with that notebook. Well, this is now a gateway of all this data. So if people really do want to report something that doesn't fit any kind of norm, we can allow, the designer can allow that sort of thing, and it all comes back into the database. And then at that point, you could see where we talk about kind of the third point. You are now able to take the data as it stands, whether it's day 1 or day 300. You can put out your standard reports. You can look at the data. You can export your data to your analytics or into your statistical packages and go to town. Right? So the one thing you do know is that data is good. In fact, one of our key customers has always said the thing that he loves about it, even though he says it forces us to go down a path of good design, is the quality of data at the end.
That's it. And that's the reason why there's so many challenges. And if you ask anybody that is dealing with scrubbing the data, because we talked to a lot of folks doing that as well, and there's an immense challenge with being able to organize that data from disparate places and being able to make the design work for you. And just by curiosity, if somebody wanted to ask you to review their kind of mindset, how much does it cost to talk with you for a few minutes to say, hey, are we going in the right direction?
We'll do it.
Nothing. How you like that? So in this instance, we're talking about a specific case study that you guys are doing with EPA and USDA information that's going to those reports. Tell us how that works, because we'll talk about some of the other agency questions that we had at the front end, because a lot of those folks came from the VA. They're not doing seeds and they're not doing bio stuff, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's talk about
this is kind of the founding of our company. We had to do all these data interfaces. So we had to get data from analytical labs that are looking at perhaps genetic type of testing. We had to go to residue. We give them one of these one of these electronic interfaces, these notebooks, and they're able to give us these pieces and parts, right? Sometimes they actually want to track what things we're looking at, like the sample tracking. These might be a chemical or a seeds that are going out. Well, when you put all that together, there's actually people who are going to do this for you, and they're going to look and say, hey, there's this safety or efficacy of this plant is doing X. That biology site, that's a loaded area right there, by the way. That represents well over 20 plus that might belong to the sponsor, or it might be independents. It might be appointed by someone to look at these type things. And they're also giving you data. Now you can imagine you're like drinking from a fire hose if you're trying to collect this through some standard process with an Excel sheet. Then you have to take all that data and you're going to have to quickly build probably you would say a pretty complex report for like the EPA or for the USDA. They each have areas that care about certain data. Well, we have the data in there. So if you design it correctly, you're building it once and then reporting on it on a regular basis with each one of them. So you're able to say, hey, let's send the EPA report out for this month, say, or for this quarter. And you're not rebuilding a report. How many times have we all been caught in Word trying to figure out what font this is and what we're going to do? Well, those with our e-publisher, we take a lot of those problems away so that science, in our case, scientists can do it. But really, in any case, anyone who is worried about the data, where it's financial, logistics, they can do what they do best, which is collect the data, report on it correctly, and then move on to whatever next is on their list. You also have the ad hoc reports, of course, but like we said, we also have ability. We use our own product for ourselves, so that we can actually do quality assurance all along, because we're always checking it. And in this case, this is how Global Ag and our team started, the scientists started, and saying, wow, we could really use a software product, and how they came up with eStudy 20 years ago.
That's awesome. And I think you mentioned the quality assurance piece is becoming more and more critical, especially in the federal landscape, making sure that the data integrity is there across the board, but certainly in your research, so that it's buttoned down and everybody has good faith in the output of the data. And
Right.
as you mentioned, this isn't just for ag. We're using the ag scientific methodology to show how this works, but we have a lot of folks here from VA, from FEMA, and different places where they have to collect immense amount of data to be able to feedback up through the management structure of their agencies. And this is the same methodology that can be applied so that the data is clean, because the design is right on the front end, and then your output is good.
Yeah, so we actually are trying to depict this picture really nothing more than, it doesn't really matter who's using it. The same methodology works really well, and the same software base and platform could really provide beneficial, because I don't think you're going to stop collecting data. I think you're going to keep doing it.
Not anytime soon, that's for sure.
You're going to want to reuse it and repurpose it, not say, I mean, who wants to go to their boss and say, well, we have to go back and recollect this because something went awry. No, you want a base. You want to keep growing it, and you want it under control. We're all dealing with tremendous amounts of data growth, but we're even dealing with, how do we know what data we already have? All the data scientists, that's all they talk about nowadays, right? Is how are we going to organize, catalog, and keep track of all the data sources we have. And I know that it's a struggle for a lot of people. There's a lot of new principles coming out of how we should do metadata and how we should control it. These are all things we've dealt with, and we think we have a pretty good practice for at least the collection of the data.
And I think that's what most of the folks here that are not in ag wanted to hear, is how that can help the data structure from the front end, helping them make sure that they get the good data in the back end. So we do have some questions that we're going to get to, and we asked this coming in already. Oh, hang on a second. I didn't realize I was sharing results that whole time. That's fantastic. Hold on. Here we go. When do you expect a data collection? And that is happening immediately. We have a bunch of folks that already said this, but a lot of folks have an issue today that they're trying to solve. So go ahead and let us about that, and we will get to your questions right now. And I have a couple here. Jeffrey asked a question. The eStudy platform provides a way of interagency data sharing. Is this a common use? That's a great question.
Because we're cloud-based, that actually wouldn't be a problem, but perhaps our diagram eludes that somehow we have some magic bean of connected. No, it's not. But because we are in the cloud, it would not be hard for us to do, to be that intermediary of if you needed to collect it between agencies. I can tell you right now, being in ag, in the clinical world with human, you deal with the FDA, but in the ag world, we deal with the FDA, the EPA, the USDA, and I could probably keep going when I start talking about some of the European ones in private industry. So we know how to have, use data many places, could kill many birds, one stone.
That's fantastic. Hang on a second. I want to go back to some of the questions that were there earlier. We answered the question about, can veterans access this platform outside the VA firewall? And the answer is
absolutely yes.
Absolutely. How do you deal with compliance and efficacy? You do that with a good design on the front end and locking it down so that there's audit trail, right?
Locking it down, there's audit trail, and there's also good review. One of the things is, because we're a software company associated with a science company, we can actually ensure that we're collecting data in the right way, in the proper way.
Yep. So I want to make sure people know they can absolutely ask questions. Chat, raise your hand. We did have a hand raised a while back. Hold on a second. Sorry it took me so long to get there. Let me see if the hand is still raised. I don't see anybody with a hand raised right now. If we answer the question, great. We do have people asking a question about whether we can get the slides are there. Terry, if you can put them in again for the folks that came in late, that you can have access to the slides for the handouts. And this is being recorded so that you can play it over and over again and submit it to the award places out in Hollywood for the performance. But yeah, you'll get a copy of those as well. And I'm going to close this poll down. I will let you know that there's a lot of folks that have an immediate need and some people that don't. So we'll make sure that you get conversations on those.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I stop the share results on those. All right. Any other questions before we jump on? Let's see here. Don't see anything there. There's one in the Q&A. 1 second. Is iAdvantage already approved on the VA SaaS Pass catalog? I don't know that we'll find out about that, Adam. That's a great question. I work on a research study with the VA and DoD data collection sites. Some data transfer techniques are approved by one agency, but not the other. I can't imagine that would ever be the case, Emily. And goes on to say, have you run into this issue? Do you have techniques and or security specification that will satisfy both agencies? Great question, Emily. I think that you probably want to talk about that with Jamie directly, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great questions though, because hey, and the going between agencies can be a challenge. Oftentimes in doing things in the history, when we've worked with some survey folks, just making the definitions align, create a problem. So welcome to interagency friendliness, right?
That's right.
All right. Great question, Emily. We'll make sure that Jamie reaches out to you as well. And we'll find out for you, Adam, as well. Who has any other questions, any other chat pieces? All right. So we will let me do this real quick so I can go back to my slides. And we'll make sure you get what you need there. All right. So for folks for the session takeaways so that they have what they need, because we're going to get them out of here in just a couple of minutes. What do you got for them?
Sure. So first of all, eStudy was built on the whole concept of a scientific methodology. Very much plan it, execute it, analyze it, and then go back and plan new stuff to get better stuff. Good design equals good data, and scaling bad data is not going to be very good in the future. If you continue to collect data and it's not good, it's just going to create more and more havoc. And that's a data scientist will tell you that's what they're living today. We've gotten so good, we have a lot of stuff that we have to either clean up or disregard.
Yep. And or spend a lot of money to try to fix.
Yes.
You know, that's the key. And we see that on the back end, which is one of the biggest issues. And I don't care what it is that you do, the better you can get your data on the front end, the better it is on the back end. So as I mentioned earlier, you do not have to buy from any vendors, including iAdvantage. But if you want to reach out, that you are a small business, that's number one. Dunn's and Cage Code are there, GSA schedule holder. You can see the different SINs that are available there. And if you're from procurement and you need a particular set aside or there's a particular contract vehicle that is necessary, you guys can team with people. You do it all the time.
Absolutely.
Right. So I want to make sure you know about that. And for the folks who are asking questions about the presentation, it is being recorded. So you will get a copy of that. There'll be a recap email. It'll probably come out early next week. We reformat this, make it look nice, and we'll get that presentation out to you. You may even get one that's just the raw form just immediately, and then one that comes after that. But you will get that, and we'll have the ability to reach out to Jamie and his crew one-on-one to talk about whatever specific requirements you have and get you the right information that you need so that you can get to where you want to go. And we're doing this. It's 11:39. We did it in 40 minutes, Jamie Blackburn.
All right.
So there you go. We really appreciate you guys joining us. If you have any additional questions, feel free to shoot those to either one of us, preferably Jamie, because he knows what he's talking about. And you are welcome to reach out to him directly as well. Any parting comments for the folks that joined us?
No, just thank you, everybody. Thank you for considering.
Yep, we appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully it was beneficial. and we will see you next time. We will enjoy the rest of the summer heat down there in North Carolina, Jamie.
All right. You
All
the
right.
same.
Thanks, man. Good stuff. Appreciate it.